Do you have a high school romance that you look back on with rose-colored glasses? Lots of people do. I know I do. I actually married mine. That's another story. Our relationship with pivot cycles is pretty similar to that though. We look back on these bikes with a real fondness. We started riding pivot bikes 10 years ago with their original Mark IV, and it was a bike that we had a lot of passion for. It was so well engineered and was really ahead of its time in so many regards. Where our relationship with pivot cycles differs from most high school romances, however, is that your high school sweetheart probably doesn't look as good as they once did. Pivot cycles, on the other hand, have continued to get better and better looking. This was a brand that always put performance above aesthetics, and consequently some of their bikes had a look that, well, only a mother could love, and probably a blind drunk mother at that. We are so stoked to see that Pivot have found a way to reconcile performance and aesthetics and have come out with some seriously beautiful, kick-ass looking bikes now. The Mark 5.5 that was released only a few months ago is a superb looking bike, and the new Trail 429 that we've got here today follows in that vein. It is a 29er trail bike, 120 mils of travel rear, 130 mils of travel up front, and it looks so damn good. We are out here today at Old Man's Valley, or the Hornsby MTB Park in Sydney, to get in some quick laps on this bike that Pivot have only just released today. Let's take a look at some of the finer details. Many of you out there are probably familiar with the Mark 429 Trail, which was Pivot's previous 29er trail bike that kind of filled this category. Now the Trail 429, this is going to get confusing, isn't it? The new Trail 429 is a similar beast in terms of the category that it occupies, but the aesthetics of the bike have obviously been greatly improved. The geometry is tremendously updated as well, and this bike is a thoroughly modern trail bike now, and there is an awful lot to like about it. Obviously, when you look at this bike, the visuals are superb. That clean line of that top tube feeding into the rear end is lovely. The internal cabling too keeps it all looking super neat. The graphics are more subtle too than we've seen from Pivots in the past. It is a really classy looking machine. The geometry is thoroughly modern. The head angle has been slack. It's got a shorter rear end, 430mm stays, so it's nice and snappy handling. The reach is obviously increased too, so definitely following in that longer, lower, slacker vein that seems to be hitting every single bike category at the moment. Like all Pivot dual suspension bikes, this one uses the DW Link suspension system. It is an amazing suspension system, incredibly active, offering really great efficiency. Like the Pivot Switchblade that we tested a year or so ago, this bike uses a Super Boost rear end. Now, Super Boost is a wider spacing than your traditional boost spacing, which is 148mm. This takes the spacing of the rear hub out to 157mm. Now, the reasons for doing this is not to sell more hubs or to be a total pain in the ass. The chain line is shifted an additional 4mm outboard, which allows for a more even triangulation of the spoke tension on the rear wheel, said to add to the rear wheel stiffness by about 30% at the rim, which is a significant amount. And on this kind of bike where you're going to be riding it hard on that rear wheel and turning aggressively off that rear wheel, sliding it into things, it actually makes a lot of sense to go wider. Whether or not we're going to see more brands adopting this Super Boost standard remains to be seen, but we wouldn't be surprised if it becomes a more widely adopted standard in years to come. Anyhow, you can of course get 157mm hubs. It has been a downhill standard for some time, so you're not going to be hung out to dry if you suddenly have a problem with your rear hub. You can get spares. Pivot have finally done away with front derailleur mounting on this bike. Pivot have always been a stickler for this. They've often had front derailleur mounts on bikes when we felt it wasn't applicable at all. So it's so nice to see that gone. You still have ISCG mounts though if you do want to run a proper chain guide. Plenty of room for a full-size water bottle in the front triangle as well, which is really important in this category. The bike that we're testing today is actually the most popular build kit when it comes to sales in Australia, which is somewhat surprising when you look at the price tag, which is up over $9,000. It's using a Shimano XT XTR mix with Fox factory suspension front and rear. I guess what you need to take into account is that Pivot is a premium brand, and so people who are looking to buy this bike know that they are up for a hefty whack of cash. They're not looking to scrimp and save, so going for that higher end build kit probably isn't all that surprising. The bike that we're riding has an upgraded shock too. You actually have the option of going for a standard float DPS shock, or you can go for the DPX2, which we've got on our bike that we're testing here, which just gives you a little bit more supple action out the back, a little bit more compression dampening control as well, which is certainly going to appeal to people who want to ride this bike a little bit harder. and we think you are going to be able to ride this thing very bloody hard. Pivot bikes have always been incredibly stiff through the rear end. It's one of the things that we've always liked about them. They feel like they're going to go exactly where you point the bastard. And now with the Super Boost rear end on this bike, it's only going to be stiffer again. Backing this up is big rubber. You've got 2.5-inch Maxxis front and rear, so you've got the grip to back up that frame stiffness. So you know it's going to hold whatever line you're going to stick it on. That's enough yabbering on about this bike. We're going to hit the trails now and come back with some of our first ride impressions in a tick. So then, a few first impressions after just a couple of quick laps of the Hornsby Mountain Bike Park on the new Pivot Trail 429. This is an absolute winner, this bike. Highlights definitely the out at the saddle climbing. DW bikes have always had a great pedal platform, so the efficiency was never in question. What is amazing is how well the rear wheel just tracks the ground. And on those technical rocky little ups that are all around this mountain bike park, there was never an inkling that the rear wheel was going to spin or skip. The other highlight is how this bike really feels like it's with you from front to back. Part of that is just the fact that the whole thing is so damn stiff. So you've never got any of that mid-corner waggle that afflicts so many trail bikes. It also feels like the bike is sitting nicely into its travel a lot of the time. You don't feel like you're too deep or too high in your travel, and that was particularly present in corners. You never felt like you were going to be pushing that rear wheel too deep and therefore like unweighting the front wheel, and conversely you never felt like the front end was diving, nor did you feel like you were at the top of your travel and you're about to skip out. Also a very, very quiet bike as well. If we could just quiet down these cables up the front, they're a little bit of a mess at the moment, it would be absolutely dead quiet, and that is always a really lovely feeling on a bike. It makes you feel like it's fast, it makes you feel confident if your bike is nice and quiet. We'd love to play around with the suspension setup a bit more, which we're going to do in a longer term test on this bike. We're going to be hanging on to this thing for a little while now, and probably quite a long time, to be honest, if our first impressions are anything to go by, because this is a really, really lovely bike.